Hello, my name is Gray.
And my name is Crystal.
And this is Busty Asian Beauties, a supernatural commentary podcast where I, someone who has seen the show several times.
And I, someone who only knows the show through social media, discuss every single episode of Supernatural from start to finish. Also, we are both Asian.
Both Asian. For today's episode, we will be discussing Season 4, Episode 7, It's the Great Pumpkin, Sam Winchester. Written by Julie Siege, a new name in the writing team, and directed by Charles Beeson. Julie Siege wrote a very important episode of Supernatural.
Okay.
The monster at the end of this book.
Okay, yeah.
Which I think is interesting. She is only in seasons 4 and 5, so.
Interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other, women writers who we're gonna encounter later?
I just don't know.
Yeah. I feel like every time I see a new woman's name, I'm like, maybe she won't be weird about women, but then she is weird about women. I guess that is just what Supernatural does to you.
I'm looking through the writers and, Oh, we have one. I remember. What's her name? Meredith Glynn.
Oh, yeah. People like Meredith Glynn.
Yeah, people are like Meredith.
All right. All my hopes are now on Meredith Glynn.
Yeah. Eugenia Ross Lemming is a woman.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well. Well.
She's doing the opposite of intersectional feminism.
Yeah. Exactly.
She said, I will not intersect this non-feminism.
Sure. Yes. She did say that. That's a quote from her. If Cass wasn't in this episode, this would be maybe one of the most miserable times I've ever had watching Supernatural.
It was funny because the entire first half of the episode without Cass, I was watching it with such a deep frown on my face. Yeah. And then he showed up and I was like, oh my god, it's him! And I was giggling, twirling my hair every time he was around. And couple things I want to comment on before we start.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that the last 10, the last 10 minutes of this episode I did watch on Zoom from Crystal's laptop. Yes. Because my very legal, non-pirated version of Supernatural was not working. And I would like to... You were not around while I was doing the watching. You were doing your own shit. Yeah. My audio was so bad. Because it was your typical Zoom audio where it's it doesn't record the music or anything. It just records the dialogue. That was what was coming through to me. So everything in the last 10 minutes sounded like it was a terrible dub of Supernatural. So I just want to preface that that was what was happening.
Yeah. At least you had captions.
I did have captions, and it was wonderful. Yeah. And also, guys, girls, non-binary fellas, everyone in between, we are witnessing Destiel live. I had this thought, while watching this episode. I'm literally watching Destiel right now. And we are. I feel like this episode is the first one where it really felt like we're watching Destiel.
And we're also watching the much less popular ship Sam Uriel live.
We are also watching Sam Uriel live. It's so fascinating to me because I don't know, for so long Destiel has been kind of this nebulous thing for me.
Mm.
Like, after the series ended, and I would watch, like, one episode at a time of a random episode. And,
Yeah.
like, it always just felt like this nebulous, like, ungraspable thing. And now, it's right in front of me, and I'm watching it play out, like, week by week. And it's like, oh, it's starting, and it's gonna continue going. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Happy for
Yeah.
you.
You're not? What does that mean?
I only, like, it's hard for me to care about Destiel when I don't like Dean during a certain week.
The thing is, like, like the quote Destiel this episode is really like Cass character development. So
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm so into it, because it's like we get to see more of Cass, and it's like him
We do
developing
get to
as
see
a
more of
character
Cass.
and expanding what it means for him to be doing all these things that they're doing. And it's
Yeah.
actually not about Dean at all, like the Cass parts right now. But it's still, I would still say that it is a Destiel moment. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
gonna
just
give
wish
them that.
Dean wasn't the first person that Cass met during his stint on Earth. I guess he met Jimmy.
He
Whatever.
did in fact meet Jamie. And you know what? I
Cast
think
Jimmy
that guy's
for the
gay or
win.
something. Yeah.
I do think that guy's gay or something.
Should we say that that's a reference to an email we received?
Oh yeah, let's not take credit for the sentence. I think that guy's gay or something. That was an email that we got.
It's from Jason. So thank you, Jason, for your wonderful email to us. We quote it so much. We literally say, like, I think this guy's gay or something to each other about literally anyone. So,
Yeah. It's a good sentence.
Yeah. I think this guy's gay or something.
Or something.
Yeah. Well, let us start.
What did I know about
the
this episode?
Which is, we do that by asking you what you know. So, what do you know about this episode before going in? I think this is a very prominent episode in the fandom and just the lore of the show. Like, it's important for a lot of characters, so I'm not surprised if you know, like, pretty much everything.
I mean, I don't know the case of this episode, because the case is stupid. But... God.
I texted you, like... I think, like, this double bluff is so fucking stupid. And then...
Yeah.
And it was. It was so stupid.
It was so stupid. But other than not knowing much about the case... Okay, I know we have the Destiel scene where Sam and Cass meet for the first time, and there's, like, the handshake and the hand over the hand, and, like, Cass calling Sam, like, the boy with the demon blood, and Sam having a cute thing where he goes, like, oh my god, I mean, no, sorry, wait. Oh, good for him. I know that we meet Uriel for the first time in this episode, which is exciting. What I knew about the case was that there was a witch, and that, like, Sam and Dean were, like, looking to, like, small picture, whereas the angels wanted to do something big picture about the case. But I didn't know the specifics. And I knew about the bench scene where Cass says, I'm not a hammer, as you say.
As you say? He has questions, he has doubts.
Yeah. So that's what I knew about this episode.
Yeah. Well, honestly, this episode it's like good to me, like it's the case is stupid, but the episode is iconic in a way.
I think all the good parts of the episode are completely separate from the case, so it's hard to call it good overall.
Yeah, that's true. Like, it feels separate, and also, like, if the case was literally anything else, it would still work. If it just had, like, some fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Well, we start the episode with a road so far that I thought was very nice. It was just, it's Halloween, and it starts off with Sam from the very first episode going like, I hate Halloween or whatever he says there. And then like, monsters show up and it's like Halloween, Halloween, Halloween.
Okay, yes, but okay,
And
did I get the wrong music for this road so far? Or was it like was it an instrumental that sounded both dramatic and comedic?
I would say it sounded comedic.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It sounded like both to me. It didn't really work.
Yeah, okay. I liked, and then after the monster parade, we get Cass, and I love that. Because it's like, oh, he's kind of a monster. Like, that's the vibe, right? Like, look at all these monsters, and then there's this guy who may or may not be a monster. And it's, I just think, like, this, like, having angels kind of, like, makes the concept of, like, what is human, etc., like, slightly more nebulous than what it was before. And I like that.
Agreed.
But, yeah, that's for the road so far. We start the episode with like a 2 days before Halloween situation, and a woman comes home and she's carrying a pumpkin and a box of candy, like a bucket box of candy. And she has a lovely husband and a lovely child, and the husband is feeding the kid, and it's so messy. And the thing is, we used to have like a little baby in the house because my little sister is so much younger than me. So that's recent. Like, that's recent in my mind. I was already like a grown child. Like, I was like a teenager when she showed up.
Yeah.
And I remember feeding the kid. And I just think if you're feeding a child and like it's that messy, I think something is happening that shouldn't be happening. I don't know. Maybe my little sister was a very, like, proper, like, like, neat child.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, okay. I don't know. I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. Why they make the kid so messy? Stop it. Like, have a bib. There should be a bib.
It's true. Here. There was no bib.
There was no bib, and I hated it. There should be a bib. The woman puts the candy up in the, like, fucking drawer or whatever that's called, cabinet. And the guy is like, oh, I'm gonna get some candy. And the lady is like, don't do that because it's gonna run out and we need to give it to the children. And she goes to get the baby and gives the baby a bath or whatever, a wash. And she asks, like, are you gonna come with me? Like, with the husband. And the husband's like, no, I'm just gonna stay here with all the candy. I'm not gonna do anything. And he does do something, which is he eats one candy. And then he gets a fucking razor lodged into his, like, upper palate. Is there a lower palate? Is that a thing? Maybe? Or is it soft and hard? I think it's soft and hard palate.
Yeah, that sounds right.
He had a razor up his soft palate, and it's actually a very, very visceral scene to watch because the camera is inside the mouth.
That's true. That was fun.
It was fun. I loved it. But he was digging the razor out, and then he digs it out, and then he starts coughing up even more razors. And it's like, he's dying. He's dead. And then his wife walks in with the little baby child.
Yeah.
And the guy's dead. And the kid doesn't look traumatized.
I don't think the kid understands what's happening.
Yeah. No, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if he's gonna die, at least die, like, early enough for your child to not know.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very thoughtful and considerate of this guy. I agree.
Yeah. Off the witch, too.
So, we cut to Sam and Dean questioning Mrs. Wallace,
the day after,
who is the wife. Yeah, the day after. So, By the way, it is now one day before Halloween. Gasp. Uh, so, you know, she's talking about how razor blades and candy are an urban myth around the time of Halloween. And she didn't think it would actually happen. But Dean finds a hex bag under a table. And at this, Sam starts asking, like, hey, did he have any enemies? Like, maybe a woman? And Mrs. Wallace, like, freaks out a bit, goes, like, he would fucking never have an affair, and no one hated him. Get out. So, they do get out. And they go to a motel room
For
where,
once,
yeah.
for once, when they interview someone and they're like, your husband or your wife or your whatever, did they have any enemies? I want the person to be like, yeah, probably. Like, I think this guy's a bit of an asshole, and I think many people hate him.
Yeah. I'm sure it probably happens at least one episode.
Yeah, it probably does. I mean, there are 15 seasons of this show.
There sure are.
Sure.
So Sam's doing readings, and he's also inspecting the contents of the hex bag. There's like a bit throughout this episode where Dean's like eating a bunch of Halloween candy, and it's not funny, but it does happen. Sam says like a line where he's like, Dean shouldn't really be celebrating Halloween this much because for us every day is Halloween. Okay, Sam. And so what's
Do you
inside
know
the
why
hex bag?
he hates Halloween? Like the canon reasoning?
I know that the reasoning that the fandom says makes more sense than the canon reasoning is that his mom died 2 days after it. But is the canon reason just that for them every day is Halloween?
No, there's a future Halloween episode where he expounds on why he hates Halloween. It's in a very much later season Supernatural episode. And I thought that episode was fun and I liked it.
Okay. Well, I look forward to finding out.
Look forward to it.
So, what's inside the hex bag is gold thread, which is an herb that's been extinct for 200 years, like a genuine Celtic coin that's 600 years old, and then the charred metacarpal bone of a newborn baby.
Which is gonna be surprisingly relevant.
Yeah, which is fun.
Yeah. Dean was like, this bone's disgusting. It sounds like it's probably like 100, 200 years old. It's fine. I respect that.
Yeah, I respect that also. Dean reiterates that he hates witches, which, yeah, okay. I know he says in canon it's because, like, he finds their spell practices unhygienic, but, like, it is just really convenient that his least favorite monster is a women-dominated career. Yeah. Like, maybe Dean should think about that. But yeah, meanwhile, Dean cannot find any reason why someone would want to kill Luke Wallace.
Yeah. Now we are at a fucking high school party. Were you like a high school party person? I am willing to bet no. Yes.
No. Yeah, in senior year, I found out that my classmates drank alcohol, and I was, like, genuinely shocked. Like, I was that kind of a kid.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, you're not, like, of drinking age at senior year for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people do it, but did I know at the tender age of 17 that people did it? No, because none of my friends did.
None of your friends drank?
No.
Okay. The way I said okay, it was like with so much disbelief. I do mean like okay in a proper, non-judgmental way.
Yeah.
I was also not a party person, and I think I was just in a school that wasn't also a party school. Do you think that's like a fundamental experience in life that you missed? Because sometimes I do feel that
No,
way.
I don't. It
Okay.
sounds like it's not fun, and according to Supernatural, you might, like, die from it, so.
Yeah. According to my friends who were in like party schools, everyone vaped. And I was like,
Okay.
okay. I think smoking is so sexy. Vaping, I think, is so horrible. And I don't care about the health consequences at fucking all. I just think if you're going to do something that is edgy or whatever, might as well do it while looking like hot shit. So that's my take for why you should smoke always every day. We follow like two ladies. One of them is Jenny and the other is Tracy.
I don't know how to
And
impress upon the audience how bad the acting in this scene is. Like, this entire scene feels like it was written and acted by aliens who only learned about Earth teenagers through, like, watching one 90s teen show that starts with someone introducing the cliques in a high school.
that is true. But it was fine. I didn't find it too much.
Huh, I found it pretty unwatchable.
Yeah, I found one scene unwatchable, which we'll get into when we get there. But okay, so one of them is dressed like a nurse and then the other is dressed like a cheerleader, which becomes semi-relevant in a comment later on. They're in a party that is so sparse of people.
Yeah.
Like the hereditary party where they bake a full cake looks so much more fun than this party. And that party was just fine, I think.
Mm.
I love how my basis for parties, because I've never been to a house party, is the party from Hereditary where they bake the cake. They say something which I was like, what the fuck does that mean? They say, this party blows, we should go TP somebody.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And
Toilet
apparently
paper, yeah.
TP means toilet paper. And also, it means to wrap something or someone in toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Houses get TP'd on, like, Halloween sometimes. Like,
Like,
people
okay,
find it fun to, like, just, like, wrap all the trees and some of the house in toilet paper.
you go around the house and you put, like, you
Well,
carry
I
toilet
feel
paper
like
and then.
usually what you do is, okay, you carry toilet paper like a roll, and then you toss it really high in the air to, like, get it around a branch, and it, like, unfurls beautifully, and you just sort
Ah.
of leave long strands of toilet paper hanging off of trees and such. And it's, like,
Yeah.
meant to be a mean thing to do to, like, make it, like, an annoying cleanup job for the person who lives in the house.
Yeah.
But it looks pretty cool.
I learned incredibly recently that people, like, in other places don't just call every kind of tissue tissue. So, like,
Yeah.
you guys have facial tissue, you have toilet paper, you have table napkin, you have
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you have stuff like that. Like for us, everything is tissue, and basically tissue by virtue is toilet paper. So if like I remember one time like a K-pop idol like ate something and then to wipe his mouth, he brought out a roll of toilet paper and then wiped his mouth with that. And everyone was like, that's so nasty. That's so nasty. And I was like, what? And that's
It's
how I
fine.
found out. That's how I found out about the whole like napkin blah 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 debacle. Which is, I think,
Yeah.
fascinating because I have told people before that I use a napkin. I don't know, maybe I should edit this out. Like, for my period. And now I'm
Uh-huh.
wondering, like, what they thought that meant. Because, like, napkin here is menstrual pad. So, like,
I see.
so, like, I used a napkin for my period. I think I think maybe there was a miscommunication there, but they didn't ask questions, so I don't know.
I feel like they probably got that it was just like a different
Something.
term.
Yeah, a different term. As the party goes on, they approach a guy, and the guy's like, "Oh, I can't get into the fucking booze cabinet. Also, are you going to the mausoleum tomorrow?" And they're like, "Yeah, probably we're going to the mausoleum. Can I bob for some apples?" So Jenny, Tracy goes and bobs apples, which something that I am deeply unfamiliar with. But it's just a tub with water, and then there's apples on it.
Yeah, and I know that it's a real thing because it was in Charlie Brown, and there's a Regina Spektor song called Bobbing for Apples.
I know that it's real because this is completely very relevant to why Sam hates Halloween. It's a story about bobbing apples.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I look forward to this story even more now.
This teaser of 4 years in the making is so fascinating. She succeeds, so Jenny goes and bobs for apples herself.
Specifically, I think we have to explain that the dynamic here is that they're both into this guy that they're talking to, Justin.
Who looks like the most loser guy alive. But you know what? I'm not gonna judge.
Yeah, and Jenny at first is like, oh, that's lame, I don't want to do that. But then, Tracy, does bobbing for apples in a way that I think is supposed to be sexy. Yeah. And, Justin's into it. And then, that's when, Jenny stalks over and is like, let me have a go.
She's having a hard time bobbing for apples. And then suddenly she just can't lift her head out. It's like something is pushing her down. And I thought this was an interesting thing because this is the part that I couldn't watch. They were trying to pull her out of the water by grabbing her arms. And I just thought what? If someone is drowning in front of you in a tub of water, I think you would grab them by the body. But, they were not doing that. Yeah. And then she gets boiled alive.
Yep. The water increases in heat, starts bubbling, and her face turns really red, and she fucking dies. Pretty cool way to kill someone, I have to say.
So Sam and Dean enter this fucking basement. And it's basically Tracy, who's covered in a shock blanket, talking to some guy, a forensics guy. And Sam and Dean see this. And Dean stops Sam from going and goes, no, I got this one. And Dean looks excited. And Sam goes, 2 words, Dean. Jail bait. And Dean goes I would never. But in a tone and a face that's I would though. And it's I hate it so much. I hate it so much.
That's great that this 29-year-old man has and or would fuck 17-year-olds at his age. That's great. I think it's really good that Supernatural did that as a joke, and they should do it all the time because it's really good. I also just fucking hate the word jailbait so much.
I know, yeah.
For obvious reasons. Ugh. Because, bait implies intentionality, etc., and it's, fully a one-sided you being a creep thing.
Yeah. But Dean does go to Tracy.
The fun thing that I found out while looking up the origins of the word jailbait, are that the wiki page for the word ends with, the frequent use of the term jailbait in popular culture has been linked to a greater understanding of age of consent laws among teenagers. Diversity win. This term that was probably coined by creeps and pedophiles has led to greater understanding of age of consent laws among teenagers. Good job.
Dean goes up and says like, "Oh, do you know Luke Wallace?" And Tracy's like, "Nope, I don't." And then in the back, Sam is looking for hex bags, and he finds one. And like that's all that happens this scene.
Yep.
Yep.
So we go back to the motel room. Sam's reading the lore books, and he says that these killings probably aren't about revenge. They might be a witch working a spell. So he says that like there's some like Celtic ceremony where you have to do 3 blood sacrifices over 3 days. The last before midnight on the final day of the final harvest, which this year is October 31st, Halloween. And then Sam starts saying things that I found no factual basis for on any of the internets. He says that the witch is summoning a demon named Samhain, which they keep pronouncing like it's like first name Sam, last name Hain, when like the actual ceremony is pronounced Samhain. But you know, whatever. If that's what they're gonna say, that's just what I'm gonna say for this episode. Sam says, okay, that this is a demon, and that Halloween originated because, like, Celtic people believed that it was, like, the night of the year when the veil between the living and the dead was thinnest, and then they were all super afraid that Sam Hain was gonna come get them, so they would wear masks and, like, leave candy out and carve faces onto pumpkins. And then Sam says, oh, he was exorcised centuries ago, which I thought was so funny. But yeah, so Google does not indicate that Sam Hain was ever a demon. It's just the name of a holiday. And Time Magazine says that the particulars of the holiday are really not known at all, so we could not say anything about masks or sweets or anything. So, yeah. Supernatural. Sam says that this is like really heavyweight witchcraft and the ritual can only be performed every 600 years. That is tomorrow. Another thing about Sam Hain is that once he is raised as a demon, he can raise like a bunch of monsters. Like, just any of them? I guess. Like, zombies and ghosts. Dean has, like, a joke part where he says that he is genuinely afraid of leprechauns because they have small hands. Yeah, whatever. They're nervous about what'll happen if they raise Sam Hain and then every other monster.
This is interesting to me because they talk about it like, oh, everything we have ever fought all in one place. This is exactly the plot of the beginning of season 15.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And they were in a cemetery too. Dean is eating candy, which, you know, they do a lot this episode. And Dean is watching the Luke Wallace's house. Well, the Wallaces, I suppose. Dean is watching the Wallaces' house, and he's saying that he interviewed the lady again, and he doesn't know how to connect, and blah, 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 and there's nobody here, and, like, we need someone who can go to the Wallaces and also go to the party, and we don't know anyone who's like that. And he's he's talking and talking and talking, and he goes, son of a bitch. And Sam's like, quit whining. And Dean literally goes like, no, Sam, I mean, son of a bitch. I hate that. I hate that entire exchange. I thought it was so corny, so wrought out. There's something that Katya says a lot. It's so corny, tired, and played out. I would say that it is all 3 of those things.
Yeah.
And apparently Tracy from the party is the babysitter for the Wallace baby. So there goes their connection.
Yep. So Dean returns to the motel, and yeah. Well, Tracy said, like, oh, I have no clue who Luke Wallace is during the interview, so definitely something is up. Um, and then Dean has a line which, listen, I respect the hustle.
Yeah.
I respect taking misogynistic pedophilic lines and turning them into trans Dean rights. And I also support trans femme Dean rights. I support bigender Dean Winchester and he she Dean Winchesters. But I'm my heart's not in it today, folks.
Yeah.
So what he says is, well, if you were a 600-year-old hag and you could pick any costume to come back in, wouldn't you go for a hot cheerleader? I would. And he, like, sort of looks off into the distance, fantasizing. And he's clearly fantasizing about, like, playing with his teenage tits in front of a mirror. But, like, you know, if you want to interpret that as bigender Dean Winchester, like, I support you. I just can't.
The way I interpreted it was him saying, like, taking the end of that sentence and just running with that part. You know, like, he said, like,
oh, just
if you could pick any
hot
costume,
cheerleaders in general.
and then he goes, like, wouldn't you go for a hot cheerleader? And then he pauses, like, a long time. And, like, it feels like his answer, like, I would, is in reference to, wouldn't you go for a hot cheerleader? Meaning, wouldn't you have sex with a hot cheerleader?
Oh.
I don't know. Like, that's how I interpreted it. But even the show was like, what's going on here? Because they made Sam do the what's going on here face. So.
True.
Yeah.
Alright, that's something. So, Sam says Tracy's not as wholesome as she looks, and what he means by that is that he just got in a fight with a teacher once. Like, who doesn't get in a fight with a teacher once?
Yeah. So, yeah, Tracy fought the teacher, and then we go to the teacher, and it's this guy who looks like Sam Winchester and Lee from season 15 combined.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah. And he has that, specifically, he looks a lot more like Lee. But he has that vibe of, like, I'm just a cool guy and I slam back beers and I...
He's literally fine!
My pickup truck. Yeah, he has that vibe.
Before they meet him, though, there's, like, a scene where, like, Dean's looking at one of the art projects, which is a mask of, like, some, like, twisted up screaming person, and there's, like, ominous music playing.
Oh, I immediately jumped to the bong, but yes, there is the fucked up mask of, like, a sick and twisted tortured person. And I mean, like, literally, like, a tortured person, not like Van Gogh, you know. But, yeah, and there's ominous music.
Sam goes, bring back memories, and Dean gets startled and goes, what? Because supposedly when he tortured people in hell, they looked like that. Rip.
Which is such a devastating, not devastating, horrifying thought. Like, the fact that he was torturing them to the point of that kind of mutilation. It's like,
yeah, I
so
mean,
scary.
It's not like he was torturing them niceys.
They were like, ouch, owie, ow.
Yeah, and then he brought them Band-Aids.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what Sam meant is being a teenager, all that angst, which I love. I love to imagine what angsty teen Sam Winchester was like. Like, I think that he definitely, like, shoplifted mascara and, like, brought it in, like, a bag at the bottom of his backpack to school and then did it in the school bathroom mirror and then wiped it off when he got home. Like, I feel like that's a big part of who Sam Winchester is in my mind. What do you think Sam's angst was like?
I know, like, fundamentally, that Sam was, like, rebellious and etc. But
yeah.
I cannot think of, like, something he would do that would be purposefully upsetting for others. I think he would unpurposefully upset others. But I don't think he was going out of his way to be like, oh, I'm gonna do this specifically to spite Dad or to spite Dean. He was just doing things and he was spiting them along the way. Like, I mean, there's like a part in, I forgot which season it was. Oh, this, season 5, Dark Side of the Moon, where he was revealed to have run away from home and he had a pet dog and everything, and it was a very happy memory, and he didn't even consider that Dean was like very devastated and worried that time of his life. And like, maybe like Sam's angst was not like reveling in the sadness. It was chasing happiness, and that just happened to be considered rebellious for him.
Oh. Well, now I'm sad. But I like this interpretation.
Yeah.
I don't think people are always so kind, though. I'm sure that sometimes he would do things to piss his dad off or Dean off.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't, like, purposefully pissing people off, but I feel like if I was Sam and I wanted to do soccer instead of hunting, I would just lie so much about other things that were happening at school and then go to soccer practice. And the fact that he, like, went up and was like, I want to do soccer practice, here are the hours, I shan't be home. Like, I don't know, I feel like that could evolve into him, like, purposefully doing things to piss off his family.
I think this is something that I was notoriously... It was something I was notorious for when I was younger. And I guess even until now. But, like, my mom has figured it out, so she doesn't do it as often. But, you know, like, parents sometimes would do, like, ultimatums. Like, if you do this, then I will do this. Or, if you do this, you know, ultimatums. And I would be like, okay. And then I would do the thing. And I'll be like, okay, now what? Are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do what you promised you would do? And, like, the thing is, like, the promises are, like, I will kick you out of the house, and I would literally do the thing and stand there and be like, okay, tell me to get out of your house and I'll never come back. Like, you know, it was like, it wasn't like rebel, like, it was rebelling, but it was more of like, you promised me something, so now deliver on it. Like, that was the logic behind it. And I think that would be something Sam would do.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Like, John would say, like, if you... Like, I mean, he did it for Stanford, right? Like, if you go to Stanford, you'll never... Like, you're never allowed to come back to us ever again. And then he went, and he committed to the bit. He was like, I'm never gonna come back. So, yeah. Like, that's so Sam.
It is very Sam.
What if he's just like me for real? Have we considered that?
What if he's just like you for real?
Yeah, the art teacher comes in and he says like, oh, like Sam tells him, oh, Mr. Harding, blah, blah, blah. And he goes like, oh, please, just call me Don. He says that he had a fight with Tracy. Like, he confirms after Dean asks, and he says that it's a shame because she's so talented and etc. And Dean asks, like, did you guys, like, have a violent altercation, as is said in the report? And they don't really clarify what he means by, like, violent altercation. He just says that she exploded and Tracy would have clawed my eyes out if the principal didn't pass by. And the reason he gives is that she's writing sigils on her notebook and she would, like, draw primitive drawings of murder, and she would put herself in the drawings and be like the murderer. So
yeah. I think it was specifically like giant murder fests, and like she would be one of the characters doing a giant murder fest. God forbid women do anything.
God forbid. She is like, she lives on her own. She has an apartment, and she she got here a year ago because she was emancipated. She's an emancipated teen. Which, that's like the first time I heard that word used that way. But is that a common... I think that's...
Oh, yeah, it's like a legal thing.
Ah. Yeah. Dawn says, like, God only knows what her parents were like. Which, the reveal is that they're brother-sister. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is like a little joke that, like, our parents were terrible people.
Yeah.
Good for them for having that inside joke.
Mm-hmm. Happy for them.
Happy for them.
So, we return to the motel, and Sam couldn't find Tracy at her apartment. Dean couldn't find any info from her friends. And then there's, like, this totally useless scene where there's, like, this little kid who's dressed as an astronaut. This is not case relevant. I thought, like, surely this must be somehow case relevant. But no, he goes up to them. He asks for candy, trick or treat. Dean's like, this is a motel, so we don't have any candy. Sam says, no, we, like, actually bought a lot. But then Dean's like, no, I ate all of it. And then... yeah, like, I don't know, the kid keeps insisting. Sam just fucking leaves. And Dean ends the conversation with, like, oh, well, I think you've had enough candy. And then he, like, the kid, like,
squints
sort of,
at
like,
Dean, yeah.
Yeah, squints at Dean and then, like, deliberately bumps into him when walking away.
Yeah.
Real. So...
I
now
think they were just
yeah.
trying to get Sam to get, like, to the room first.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
This sure is a way to do it.
Yeah, it sure fucking is. So, as you mentioned, Sam gets to the room first, and guess who's there, you guys? Fuck, it's been so long. It's so... oh my god, it's him. He's there. He's literally there. Oh my god. Oh, he's so beautiful this episode. Like, he's always beautiful, but, like, he really is so beautiful this episode. Like, he's, like, sitting, and, like, his, like, little forehead seems, like, a little wrinkled. His back is facing Sam, and, like, you know, Sam comes in with his gun and goes, like, who are you? But Dean stops him because he says, Sam, wait, it's Destiel, the angel. And then we also see that Uriel is standing by the window. His back faces them, and he does not turn around for a good while yet.
Yeah.
And, you know, we get the Destiel meeting scene. Like, I don't know, Sam's face completely changes, and, like, Cass says hi to him, and Sam goes like, oh my god, sorry, I didn't mean to, and then, like, it's an honor, really. I've heard a lot about you. I'm, like, honestly surprised he doesn't call Cass sir. Like, that's so the vibe of him right now.
It literally is.
And, like, he comes forward and, like, holds out his hand, but, like, Cass, like, either doesn't like Sam or doesn't know what a handshake is. Like, it's not entirely clear what the situation is, and Sam, like, sort of, like, moves his hand a little to be like, hey, come on. And Cass, you know, shakes his hand, but really just, like, puts his hand in Sam's hand. And he goes, like, and I've heard a lot about you, Sam Winchester, the boy with the demon
blood.
And Sam's face falls, and Cass, like, puts his other hand on top of Sam's and goes, glad to see you ceased your extracurricular activities. Oh, I love him so much. He's so
yes,
pretty.
we do love him so much, but also,
but
like,
he's
how
being
devastating
quite mean.
for Sam.
This is, oh yeah, no, yes, right, Sam is also here. So, sorry, Sam. And, yeah, the thing is that Sam knew that the angels sent Dean back in time and then told Dean to, like, make Sam stop the demon blood thing. But, like, I guess it feels different coming like, from, like, maybe this whole time he was secretly hoping that Dean was lying to him, that he was just, like, making it up to, like, get him to stop because he was being such a dick in Metamorphosis, but this is, like, confirmation. And, I mean, it must also be, like, maybe he didn't know that the angels knew about, like, the Zazel blood thing specific. So, like, it's probably devastating to know that they know his full history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, Uriel says, let's keep it that way. And Dean asks Cass, like, who Uriel is, and Cass ignores the question, which is so Cass of him. He asks if they stopped the raising of Sam Hain.
Sam Hain!
And, okay, like, I was tracking, like, Cass's eye contact a lot throughout this scene.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, God. I mean, it doesn't even matter that much. Okay, like, he's first looking at Sam with, like, very intense big blue eyes, and he asks this question to Sam, but when Dean asks why, Cass, like, completely, like, he turns his head, but not his body, towards Dean, and then goes, Dean, have you located the witch? And, I don't know, it's so fun when he says Dean's name, when it's not necessary. Because, like, it feels like, here's an extra special little thing for my buddy.
He literally is obsessed with Dean. Like, I'm so sorry to say this. We'll get to the part that I thought was hilarious later. In regards to, like, staring and stuff. But, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, basically, Cass is asking if they've located the witch, if they can kill the witch, you know, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he reveals that, like, the raising of Sam Hain is one of the 66 seals. And Dean says, so this is about your buddy Lucifer. And Uriel says, Lucifer is no friend of ours. And you know what? He is the funniest angel in the garrison. He's the funniest angel in the garrison. And, like, Dean being like, it's just an expression. Like, you don't understand, Dean. He is the one who's joking here, not you. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, Cass reveals, this is important, like, Cass reveals that they found a hex bag in the motel room just
then. Oh, yeah.
And it had to have just been placed after that interview. Because, like, they weren't affected by it yet. And, like, he walks away to, like, fetch the hex bag. And, like, he's making eye contact with them. Like, when he, like, says that he found it, but then he's looking down and away from them when he says, if we hadn't found it, surely one or both of you would be dead. Which means nothing, but also means everything to me.
It literally means nothing, but it also means everything. Yeah. And, you know, they're talking. Dean is saying, well, you can locate the witch, can you? And Cass is saying, nope. And Sam says, well, we can just work together. And then Uriel just snaps and says, stop this nonsense. And Dean finally asks again, who is this guy? And Uriel finally turns around, and Cass says that Uriel is a specialist. And slowly, they figure out, after Cass says that Sam and Dean both need to leave the town, that what they're going to do is massacre the entire town.
Woo! Also,
Fun.
This doesn't matter at all, but, like, whatever god decided that Misha Collins was going to be shorter than both Jackals and Joe like, thank you so much.
Small. He is such a small guy.
Yeah, and, like, he's, like, talking, like, with such authority, but, like, because he's standing close to them, like, he's, like, clearly, like, looking up. Like, he has to, like, strain his fucking neck, incline his head to talk to both of them. And, like,
There's also a part where he, like, it pans out and it looks so ridiculous because he looks so small. Like, he's holding his hand, like, together.
Oh my god,
so he looks like a little
like,
child.
When it opens the next scene, Like, he's looking down and he's holding his hands together and he's sort of, like, stimming a bit, like, with, like, picking at his skin or something. And, like, oh my god.
Hi, Cass. And, yeah, so Cass and Uriel say that, like, oh, we're gonna kill everyone here. Sam's like, there's 1,000 people here, and Uriel says 1,214, which I like that. I love that because it's like we know the gravity of this situation, but also we don't understand it at all. Like, yeah, there's 1,214 people here. I know the exact number, but like he doesn't really understand that number the way Sam does. Because, like, to the angels, this is literally just, like, nothing, you know? But, like, to Sam, it means, like, a lot of people, so. And Uriel reveals that, you know, he's a specialist. He has purified a city before. And...
Yep, which, it's fun to, like, I feel like... Because, like, we don't really... This wasn't, like, a case, like, a city being purified, so, like... This happened, like, a long time ago. Like, I like the way that it establishes him as, like, an OG angel in the way that I feel like Cass hasn't quite been yet. Like, Uriel has a history now that Cass doesn't. Like, I feel like, did he Sodom and Gomorrah? I hope he Sodomed and Gomorrah.
Well, he is, like, in fact, like, he has amnesia moment. You know, like, because of the brainwashing.
Yeah. Poor Cass. Sorry, dude.
Yeah. There's a line here that starts one of the funniest scenes in this episode. Dean is saying, like Cass is saying, basically, that they need to hold the line and that they need to kill all these people so that the seals won't be broken. And Dean is like, oh yeah, like, you're just gonna kill 1,000 people and whatever because you screwed up. And Cass says, we need to do this thing. You don't understand. Like, there's a bigger picture here. Yeah. And Dean goes, like, right, because you're such a big picture kind of guy. And Cass walks towards him and just stares him down and says, Lucifer cannot rise. Hell rises with him if he does. Is that something you're willing to risk? And then Sam starts speaking in the background. And I do mean literally in the background. Because the camera doesn't go to Sam. It just stays at Dean, who is staring at Cass. And then it pans to Cass, who is staring at Dean, while Sam is speaking in the background. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Like, I don't know, like, why? Like, Sam is literally talking. But Cass doesn't care about him. The camera doesn't care about him. They were just staring at these two guys staring at each other. And I respect that.
I think the implication is, like, ooh, we're laying more hints about what Dean did in hell, so we're, like, having this intense look after he asks if he's willing to risk hell. But, like, they just want to fuck each other so bad it makes them look stupid.
Yeah.
Is the thing. Yeah. Oh, poor Sam. He and Cass have a rockier start.
Sam is basically, like, saying, like, no one has to die. Like, we'll do everything we can.
And no one give a shit.
No one gives a single shit. Anyway, Uriel says that, like, let's stop wasting our time. And Cass says,
he calls them mud monkeys.
We have to follow our orders.
Which is fun.
Uriel keeps on saying this. Like, he is a fan of the words mud monkeys. But... And we go back to Sam now. which I actually like this little arc he has.
Yeah.
Did you just hear what I said? I said I love this little arch he
arch.
has. Literally, he arches his back. It means attack this pussy. But like this arc he has, this episode where he becomes disillusioned by the angels, because this is his first time meeting the angels, and we are to assume that prior to this he had like a very positive outlook towards them.
Yeah.
And this actually dictates what happens at the end of the episode. But Sam here right now says, "You're angels. You're supposed to show mercy." And,
his voice like sort of breaks on the word angels. I love acting.
Yeah. And, you know, they keep on saying we have no choice. Dean says, "You do have a choice. You've never questioned a crap order. Are you just a hammer?" And Cass says,
he says, "What are you both? Just a couple of hammers." Like, Uriel's included in this, but he sadly doesn't get a Cass level arc for the rest of this show.
Yeah, like, this line is relevant to a Cass line later. Yeah, Cass says, like, well, he first says, like, even if you can't understand it, have faith. The plan is just. And he says that it is just because it comes from heaven, therefore it is just.
So,
and Dean
about
says,
it coming from heaven, God isn't there. Like, who
is
gave this order?
I think it's just like some Michael? Ambiguous... No. I don't know.
No?
I don't know.
Is Michael not around?
I don't know. I really don't.
Like there's like... The heaven seems to have a chain of command because, like, there's garrison leaders and stuff, so I feel like it's like a game of telephone where, like Michael tells, like, his next in command, hey, God said this, and then they tell the next person, Michael said God said this.
The thing is, like, with chains of commands like that, I feel like littler tasks don't even come from high up. It comes from, like, the person higher than you one step. So, like, I don't even think this is, like, who's the highest in the pecking order, who's giving this specific order to Cass to commit to this task. It's like, just like the ambiguous, like, everybody, you know, like somebody above him agreed to it and now he's agreeing to it and blah 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 blah. And it's like, it's all bullshit. It literally is just all bullshit.
But I guess since we find out later that, like, the point of all of this was to test Dean.
To follow,
like,
Dean, yeah.
Well, and also, like, as a test of Dean, like, it makes sense for this to be, like, Michael testing his vessel, you know what I mean?
It doesn't matter. Because, like, when he becomes the vessel, it's not like he's gonna have any input whatsoever.
That is true, but, like, also, like, they pay so much attention to Sam and Dean because of their vesseling, and I think that, I don't know, I feel like Supernatural is not really clear about why.
Yeah.
It's because they have to agree, right? Like, the point is, like, would Dean be willing to, like, sacrifice himself or, like, the world for the higher purpose of, like, defeating Lucifer? Like, this is just, like, a mini, like, version of that.
Evaluation of whether that is gonna be the case.
Yeah, like, how hard will it be to convince Dean to say yes to Michael? So I think that it could come from that high up if it's, like, this important of a test.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, anyway, what they eventually agree on is Sam and Dean are not leaving, and the way they do this is Uriel. I keep on saying Uriel, but he is not, in fact, Uriel. Uriel tells Dean, like, if you're not gonna leave, I'm just gonna pick you up and, like, make you leave. And Dean says, like, well, you're gonna have to kill me, which I guess is gonna be a problem because God commanded I rise from the dead, so that's gotta mean something, right? And that works. And so they say that they're gonna find the witch and everybody stay put, and they do just that.
I know we spent so long on the scene, but like I feel like
Yes.
one thing when Cass asks Dean, tell me something, Dean, when your father gave you an order, didn't you obey? And like Dean
Oh
is taken
yeah.
aback for a second before he answers. I
Yeah.
liked that. That was
I
definitely a
did like
scene of
that.
all time. And
I
it
did
also
like
makes me
that.
wonder like how much Cass knows about Dean's history.
Yeah.
Like, how hard did he think that would hit? Or, like, was he just like, oh, surely all people obey their fathers? Or, like, how much does he know?
Yeah.
And then one other thing, like, this, I find this scene really interesting because of, like, the later reveal of what the true orders are. Because, like, when
Mm-hmm.
Cass is saying, like, oh, we have no choice, these are the orders, he's facing away from them, he's facing
Yeah.
Uriel.
He's looking at Uriel, yeah.
And it's because he's both telling Sam and Dean we have no choice, we have to smite the town. And he's telling Uriel we have no choice, we have to do what Dean says. So that's fun.
Yeah. Anyway, they go
Yeah.
out of the motel room and the car has been egged.
Real.
Love that. And of course, it's the astronaut kid. And this is the only relevance of that this episode. But I do love it. And I love that,
It's pretty
it was a
funny.
sad affair. Yeah.
Also, when Dean yells astronaut after seeing the eggs, like you see Sam smile or laugh in the background, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that's cute. I'm happy for him. So they go inside the Impala, right? And Sam's like fidgeting with the hex bag. He looks upset. Uh, and after some prompting, he goes, I thought they'd be different. Like the angels. I mean, I thought they'd be righteous. Oh, baby boy. Uh, and Dean goes like, they are, and that's the problem. Because he says a-hole because they can't swear on Supernatural. He says there's nothing more dangerous than some a-hole who thinks he's on a holy mission. Um, which the last time Dean talked about holy missions was in Monster Movie when he said that hunting was a holy mission. So perhaps he should do some self-reflection about
Maybe we
this.
should reevaluate, Dean. You and I together. Let's sit down and talk.
Yeah. And then Sam says, but I mean, this is God and heaven. This is what I've been praying to.
Oh!
God! This is what I've been praying to is such a line. It's such a fucking line. Oh my god. Um, However, it is prefaced by the piano music starting, and that does make it a
Yeah.
little bit less of a line. Um, Man, this must suck for Sam. And Dean goes like, "Oh, I know you're into the whole God thing, but like, he uses the bad apples argument on Sam."
Yeah, which is such a wild thing to do. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And then he says like, "For all we know, God hates these jerks."
he literally
Which, I
doesn't.
mean, he doesn't though. Cass is his favorite little boy. And he tells Sam to not give up on his faith, which I guess is as nice as Dean can be.
Yeah,
I guess, yeah, like, this is sort of why Sam. I mean, Sam uses his powers because he has to at the end of the episode, but also, like,
yeah,
I'm sure that, like, if he still thought that angels were righteous, he would have tried a little harder to get the knife back before he used his powers. So,
yeah. He
yeah.
actually gets into it a little bit later in the car ride to the
Yes.
cemetery.
In the car
Yeah,
ride where
when he
he's
says like,
just like us for real, where he pones Dean with facts and logic.
yeah, like well, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but he basically says there that like, if the angels told me this and the angels are not even good, then what makes this a good call? Like, that's basically
Yep.
his
Yep.
argument, which, he was right.
Yeah, love it. So Sam realizes that this bone in the hex bag, like the amount of heat it would take to char this bone is like way more than a kitchen oven. So perhaps a kiln was involved.
Yeah, and it's so stupid the way they do it. He says like, I think we need to make a stop. And it's like, you guys are so corny. Like, just say like something else. Literally anything else. Maybe don't say anything, but like, I think we need to make a stop. And it's like to the fucking pottery class or whatever that is. Like, I don't know. I thought it was so stupid.
They're in that high school art classroom. And Dean says, so Tracy used the kiln to char the bone. What's the big deal? Which is so clearly like an exposition lead up whatever line, like he's being the Watson to Sam's Sherlock right now. And Sam is like, Dean, like that hexbag showed up not after we talked to Tracy, it's after we talked to Dawn. Like he had to have been the one who planted it. And then he gets like a cabinet open and there are a bunch of bones in there. And Sam goes, oh my god, those are all from children.
I mean, I don't. This is like the closest thing I guess that they would go for with like young children violence. Yeah, like child
that
death.
Baby also like died in Croatoan for sure.
Wait, which one? What are you talking about?
Like they came across an abandoned car and there was like a car seat, baby car seat, like with blood all over it.
Oh yeah, I completely forgot. But that baby sure did die. We go to a park where Castiel and Uriel are just hanging out, being buddies, being besties, being the funniest and then the most autistic angel in the garrison, respectively.
Yes. And Uriel's sitting on a bench, but Cass is standing
over him. He sits later, but yeah, I do like the blocking in this scene. Like, Cass says like, oh yeah, well, the decision's been made. And Uriel is pushing the whole like, yeah, by a mud monkey thing. And Cass says, don't call them that. And Uriel
says, took like the angel equivalent of human rights classes in like
literally
angel college. Yeah, he has like a little infographic about like what words are okay to say and what words aren't. I'm very happy for him.
Yeah. And Cass says like, don't call them that. And Uriel says, well, it's fucking true. He says they're just plumbing on two legs, which I like. You know what? We are just plumbing on two legs. We are just
plumbing on two legs.
Like, I think constantly about, like, that concept of, like, you're, like, a tube and with, like, flesh around you. Like, that concept. And it literally is true. You're literally a tube with some flesh around you.
Yep.
Cass says, like, this is close to blasphemy. Cass says, Dean has potential, he can succeed, and it's out of our hands. And Uriel says, well, it doesn't have to be, because we can still massacre everyone. Cass says, you know the true orders. Are you prepared to disobey? Which is a little hint about what is gonna be revealed later.
Yeah. I really like the way that early seasons angels, like the different ways that they react to God having abandoned them.
Yeah.
Like if you've been like godless for so long, like you are gonna question your quote unquote true orders because they didn't actually come from him.
Yeah,
and some people will set out on their own and do what they think is best for the world, like statistics wise, and I think that's cool. We cut to like it's the night of Halloween and they're trick-or-treaters and they pass by a house with weird lights going on in the basement, And we go into that basement, and it's Dawn, the art teacher, and he has Tracy tied up, and he's like reciting a spell. And then he like has like a knife that he's like going to use to slit her throat, but like, okay, was it just like they're siblings? But was there this scene? Did it have like weird sexual undertones? Like I was feeling weird sexual undertones.
I will be completely honest with you. This is the part of my completely legal streaming app where the episode just like stops working properly. So here up until the mausoleum part, I'm kind of unclear about what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this will be interesting.
I do remember that they're brother and sister, and that like the sister later on reveals that Sam Hain is like her old lover or something.
Yeah.
Who is now in her brother's
body.
And then they kiss over it.
Yeah. That definitely did fucking happen. In the beginning was 4 episodes ago. What is with this season? So, right, the weirdly sexual thing is, like, the way that she's tied up and then, like, he doesn't, like, cut her throat quite yet. He starts, like, running the knife over her neck and then down to her chest, right? Like, that was weird. What was that about?
Later on, like, okay, so what happens next is Dawn gets shot by Sam and Dean. And then, like, they untie Tracy. And Tracy goes, "Did you see what he was doing?" I thought she was completely referring to him running his knife over her breasts.
Yeah.
And then I remembered, he's also chanting a lot and, like, doing a blood ritual. So, okay.
Yeah, that was probably also disturbing. Yep. Yeah, that sure did happen. And, like, but then, like, things start getting weird where she goes, like, "Did you hear how sloppy his incantation was?" And, like, Sam and Dean are like, "Uh-oh, wait, she is not just a regular teenage girl." And they start drawing their weapons. And she goes, "My brother always was a little dim." Which is a fun twist that there's 2 witches in the town. But not very well executed.
So stupid. Like, I mean, I think it could have been good. It's just, it's not.
Yeah.
It could have been, but it's not.
Yeah. And, you know, she attacks Sam and Dean, like, sends them to the ground, holds them there, like, with her magic. And she explains that this was, like, the spell work to raise Sam Hain is a 2-person job, so she had to deal with her brother for the last 600 years, even though she fucking hates him. And that he was gonna make her the final sacrifice, but now that he's dead, she can use his blood for the final sacrifice. And, you know, she collects his blood in some cup, and also she says, "The whole time I wanted to rip his face off, and you get him with a gun." Love that. Which I think was so fun. Like, literally love that. Yeah, she's just like you for real.
Love that.
And she has a big clunker of a line where she's like, "Oh, like, you know, like, they used to keep children inside during Halloween, so now you'll see, like, what this holiday really is." Like, okay, girl, whatever. So
whatever.
Sam, like, smears his face with, like, the blood of, like, the dead guy, Dawn, and tells Dean to do the same thing, which I thought was going to be more of a thing than it actually is. But yeah, so, you know, Tracy finishes the spell and, like, the ground cracks and black smoke comes out into Dawn, which is a pretty fun visual. So, yeah, like, Sam Hain has now taken over his body, and his eyes are white now. And then, right, like, Tracy goes, like, "My love," and, like, they kiss. Yeah, it's, yeah, supernatural.
Yeah. They sure
Uh,
do.
yeah. And then he says that, like, she's aged, and Tracy's like, this face, I can't fool you, which implies that she took a teenage girl form to be sexy for her past lover, which is disturbing, maybe. Um, and then he goes, your beauty is beyond time. And then he
Yeah.
fucking snaps her neck and then says,
This
whore.
guy is the king of negging. Except, like, I don't think he's even negging her. I think he's just like, well, he does kill her. So,
Yeah. What the
like,
fuck was
why?
this?
I think they were just trying to do, like, he's evil. And, like, this gave me, like, Rowena Lucifer vibes, because this is how Rowena dies under Lucifer.
Right. Like, Cassifer is, like, chatting her up, and then he snaps her neck when their faces get really close.
Yeah.
This was what prompted my second I hate Supernatural so much it's unreal text to you.
Yeah. Like, let's bring this girl that we're gonna sexualize to hell and back, and then match with her brother. Well, I don't know what's going on with that. You know what? I'm gonna stay out of it. But yeah, the way Supernatural portrayed Tracy.
Yeah.
Is like, what?
I hope that her actress was paid like $5 million for this. It's always bad when the w-slur is in Supernatural, and it sure is bad here.
The what?
The w-slur.
I was like, the dummy slur? What? But yeah.
Yeah. Right. And then, like, we see, like, Sam Hain POV where, like, his vision is really bad.
It's blurred, yeah.
Yeah. Has he considered getting glasses?
Yeah. The implication here is that he can't see Sam and Dean. Mm-hmm. And, like, Sam explains later on that they put the reason why he encouraged them both to put blood on their faces is because Sam Hain, based on lore, can't see, like, masks' faces. So
yeah, and the blood counts.
Yeah, the blood counts as a mask. Do you think an N95 counts? I think that would be anti-Sam Hain. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. But, like, before Sam explained that, I truly thought that what they were doing was, like, the school shooter drill thing where you pretend to be dead.
Like, yeah.
And, like, smear the blood on your face to make it seem like you're injured and dead. Yeah, also, Sam says specifically, like, oh, I thought, like, maybe this would work, so I gave it a shot. And Dean is like, you gave it a shot?
What? What?
Yeah.
But you know what? Dean, shut the fuck up. That's my thought. It worked. So, like, stop it.
Yeah, like, he didn't have any better plans. But also, like, I don't know, this is very fun Sam moments. Like, it's quite similar to, remember in Route 666 when, like, Sam directs Dean to drive through a church, and he was like, oh, well, that's hallowed ground, so I thought, like, maybe it would work.
Yeah.
And Dean goes,
and
maybe?
Like,
what if you were wrong?
And
Sam goes, honestly, the thought hadn't occurred to me. Ugh, I love him. He's a fun little guy.
Yeah, so Sam and Dean, like, get on the car. They're going to the cemetery. And they have this conversation in the car where Sam says the demon's pretty powerful. There's a possibility that our usual weapons won't work. And Dean basically goes, I know what you're trying to say, and I don't want you to do it. Don't use your psychic powers. We have Ruby's knife. And Sam asks the age-old question, Why? And he just says, well, just because. Like, the angel said it.
Because
blah,
the
blah,
angel
blah.
said so. Because Mom said.
Yeah. And Sam says, like, well, you said that the angels were a bunch of fanatics. And Dean says, well, they happen to be right about this one. He's so bad. This is so bad. Like,
Yeah.
what an absolutely terrible thing to say. Like, he literally just told Sam, like, oh, those guys are fucking assholes, and, like,
Yeah.
they're the bad bunch. They're the bad apples in this basket of fruit. But don't worry, when they say that you're an evil, evil, evil person with a, like, with a fucking disease that you can never get rid of, they are completely right.
Yeah. Dean said the angels are right when they're right and wrong when they're wrong. Hope this helps.
Yeah. Sam says, like, they don't seem to be right about many things. And Dean goes like, well, you said it yourself that it's for you. It's like playing with fire. And Dean picks up the knife and hands it to Sam, right?
Yeah.
And Dean is like, please. But you have to remember that I am watching this in a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And, oh, okay. Like, pretty much like, this part, well, actually, I wasn't watching this yet in the Zoom call. So I was just watching it. Yeah, I was just watching this normal version. But I still thought that Dean, instead of raising the butt of the knife, was raising his pinky, and they were gonna do a pinky
I also
promise.
thought that was happening for a second.
They literally were gonna pinky promise on it.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I miss pinky promises.
Yeah, like, I actually, like, treated those as sacred. Like, if I lied and someone went pinky promise, I would not pinky promise and thus reveal the lie.
Yeah, they should have pinky promised here. I feel like if they pinky promised here, Sam wouldn't have done it.
And then he would be dead, so...
He would be dead, and Dean would be like, it's because of that damn pinky promise. Sam, if you just didn't pinky with me, you would still be alive.
Yeah.
And
also the entire world
would be collapsed and, you know, killed by every single person that Sam Hain raises. But yeah, Sam is like, okay, I'm taking a knife, and they go into the mausoleum. Well, we go to the mausoleum, where a bunch of people, like teenagers, are dancing, and Justin, the guy from earlier, like, imagine watching someone die, and then, like,
I still have to make it to my mausoleum party.
Yeah. Maybe this is what you do when you watch someone boil alive in front of you in a bobbing for apples situation. Like, you go to a mausoleum, you get super high. And he's like, whoa, dude, I'm so high. And then Don goes down the steps to the mausoleum, and then he locks the mausoleum door.
Yep.
Youch. And, you know, Justin is like, oh my god, what's happening? Why did you lock us in? And then the things start shaking. And then he gets taken by one of the things. By the things, I do mean, like, what do you call it? The coffin spaces.
Like,
what do you call
like
those?
Compartments in
the graves? Yeah, like, the crypt grave situation, I would say.
Yeah, like... One of the dead bodies rises and, like, grabs Justin and drags him in.
And there's like a split second, or maybe I'm imagining it, where everything starts shaking. He's just standing there, and he's probably thinking, oh my god, I'm so fucking high. Like, this is all happening because I'm so fucking high. And then he gets taken, and there's a blood splatter, and it's like, sorry, dude.
Yeah. Sorry, dude, indeed. So, Sam and Dean, they come in, and see this whole party situation. And Sam tells Dean to help the kids, so that Sam can go off by himself. Do you think he was already planning to use his powers, or was this just like a in case?
I don't think he was planning to, but I also don't think he wasn't not planning to.
Yeah, like, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
Dean shoots the lock and then gets all the teens out. And then a bunch of zombies crawl out of the graves. And Dean, who was once so excited about taking a zombie case, is not so happy about the zombies now. And, you know, he gets out a silver stake. Meanwhile, Sam comes across Sam Hain, who's standing in front of, like, a stained glass window, which is a fun framing. And Sam Hain tries to use, like, some kind of, like, blinding white light demon power. I think the same one that Lilith used, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Sam. But Sam just keeps walking forward, and he goes, oh yeah, that demon ray gun stuff, it doesn't work on me. He is so cool sometimes, unfortunately. And they have a fight.
For some reason, well, I mean, you have to remember that at this point in the episode, I was in fact watching it in a Zoom situation. Like, and I couldn't hear jack shit. Like, I mean, I could hear the dialogue, but it was, and I could read it, but it was unclear what I was hearing exactly. And I literally thought he was talking about Reagan, as in, like, I think I was, like, looking down when he said that, and he was like, oh, you think that Reagan stuff's gonna work on me? And then I looked up and I was like, why is he talking about Ronald Reagan? And it was not. It was
Sam
the Reagan
Hain was
stuff.
sending trickle-down trickle-down wealth at Sam.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they have a fight, which is just them punching each other until Sam Hain gets Sam in a chokehold, has him against the wall, and, like, has knocked the knife out of Sam's hands, so he can't use it. Meanwhile, like, you know, Dean gets all the zombies, but then a ghost appears, and he's like, oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna burn this entire room down. So he heads out to do such a thing. And then back at Sam's. Okay, so actually, he still has the knife. He tries to stab him, but then, Sam Hain shoves it to the ground. So, yeah, Sam did go for the knife first. And then Sam starts using his psychic powers. Like, he has his hand out, and he seems to be mostly, like, preventing Sam Hain from walking forward. And he's also getting, like, a few tendrils of smoke. And his head starts to hurt. He goes, ow, ouchie, and clutches it. And then his nose starts bleeding because he's concentrating so hard.
Yeah.
And I
I mean, I've said this over and over again. The animation that they do for the smoke is so cool. Every time Sam exercises some demon, it looks fucking amazing. Like, the way, like, the little pieces of smoke get out of the, like, bullet hole from Sam Hain's body.
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool.
That is
like,
cool.
I thought it was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was gonna say that I really like headaches and nosebleeds as a result of, like, using your powers too hard. Like, it's a fun physical representation.
Of the usage of that exertion, yeah.
Yeah. And then Dean is, like, there, like, in the background watching this.
He's there to react. He's there to make a face.
Yeah. And it's not a happy face.
Not a happy face.
Finally, Sam finishes, and Sam Hain is fully gone. And then he looks up and sees Dean, and he has such a guilty look on his face, or something.
He has never looked more like a puppy. He has
Yeah.
never looked more like a puppy than he
He
does
looks
here.
so much like a puppy. And, like, I'm glad that later when he talks to Uriel, he's like, actually, I did nothing wrong. But currently, he does feel guilty because, like, that's his big bro and he broke his pinky promise.
Anyway, we go back to the motel and Uriel and Sam are talking. Well, they're not. Sam is like there, and then Uriel like shows up. Um, and Uriel says, "Oh, tomorrow it's the anniversary of your mom dying, and your GF dying. So R.I.P." Well, he doesn't say R.I.P. He's saying this condescendingly. So I don't. Even if he said R.I.P., I don't think it would have helped. Um, he says like it must be difficult to bear, yet you so brazenly used the power he gave you. And Sam's like, "Excuse me?" And Uriel continues saying that the blood is profane and that we already told you to not use your abilities. And Sam said, "Oh well, I would have died if I didn't, and my brother would have died, and everyone would have died." And Uriel said, "Well, you were told not to. You have been warned twice now." And Sam said, "My brother is right. You are dicks." And Uriel says that the only reason why Sam is alive is because he has been useful so far. But the moment he stops being useful, they're gonna get rid of him.
And before that, like,
And
specifically, he doesn't stand up and walk closer to Sam. Like, there's like a
yeah.
wind effect. Like, he's using his wings to, like, just appear directly in front of Sam to be more menacing. And I think that's fun. Good
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah. And he also says that as for Dean, tell him to get off his high horse and ask him what he remembers from hell. And then we hear the quintessential shh of the wings, and
Yeah.
Uriel disappears.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's not the first
yeah.
one, because Cass has like
Yeah.
disappeared, but
Mhm.
I felt like this is the first one that it felt like, oh, they're like flying away.
Right, yeah. Before it's just like he looks away and then he looks back
And
and
then
Cass
he's
isn't
gone.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one
I
has the
guess,
sound,
yeah.
which I
Maybe
did
like
not hear. Because I was watching through Zoom.
yeah. It's fun to think that like Uriel likes showing off with his wings a little more than Cass does. Like with the
Yeah.
like going closer, whereas Cass usually walks. And it's probably because he like wants to like if he hates humans so much, being in a human vessel
Yeah.
must be
Like, he
constraining
takes
for him.
pride. He takes pride in his angelhood, I think, more than
Right.
Cass.
Yeah, yeah. So it's fun for him to like show off, do a little trick with his wings sometimes. Yeah. I mean, he
And
is
then
an
we get
interesting character because he's our second angel. Like before that, we
Angel.
just have
Yeah.
Cass.
I understand why when we get in season 15 and characters are coming back and etc., we get the characters that we get. I would say, though, that bringing back the angel who had
Yeah.
this, because, well, I know what happens to Uriel, and I think you do too. Like, on the head of the pin is like an
Yeah.
episode where his morals and like his beliefs, blah, 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 are released and like told to us. And what we learn there, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but this is just like at the top of my head what I remember. Like, it's revealed that like he kind of like is mad at God, and he like is mad, like he wants to rebel basically.
Yeah.
And like I would have loved to see him specifically, like the angels in general, but him specifically, to come back in season 15 and see like what has happened with regards to the God question. Like, oh yeah, he did come back and he is an asshole. And
Yeah.
you were probably right about this whole situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just also like, I'm sure like, well, actually, I'm not sure if this is something that's been explored before. Like, Uriel and Jack, I think would really get along.
Yes.
So, I don't know. It's just Uriel is one of, I think because he comes in so early, and he comes in his existence is confined in a season that I would consider to be the best of Supernaturals. He has a vibe that I think is quite unmatched by other
Yeah.
angels in the show. And I just would have loved to see that vibe in the future, when the vibe of the show has changed so much, and what they would have done with him if he was there, because he is so quintessentially season 4.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I'm
Such
sure
a
we'll
guy.
I'm sure we'll talk to him. Well, maybe we can.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about him more. The more he shows up and the more we are revealed his ideology and his angelhood and stuff.
Yeah. Also, as I joked in the beginning, like Samuel Real, I just feel
Samuel.
this scene is very similar to Cass's like you should show me some respect to Dean, you
Yeah.
know? Like it'd be
Yeah.
fun if each of them like had like an angel that was assigned to them. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like
but like they
but
committed
alas.
more to the Sam has a demon bit than Sam has
Right.
an angel bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh well, it'll never happen. So,
Well, maybe
we're
this
at
rewatch it will.
maybe, yeah, maybe they'll change the video. So we're in a park. It's sunny. It's nice. There's kids playing on a playground. Dean's sitting on a park bench, and Cass is sitting as well, but not on the same bench. On a bench right next to Dean's, but they're both
the
sitting.
positioning
Yeah,
the positioning of this bench is, I would think, very inconvenient in the park. But you
yeah.
do you, park in somewhere, fuck all
I
America.
just feel like it was probably one bench, and then like the CW was like too gay, do it again, and then they like changed the set and refilmed it.
I like the fact that it's two benches, because it's like for example, when it pans out, they're next to each other,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. But I really, really don't think they could have done that kind of effect of like being close to each other like that if it was the same bench.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also
Yeah,
feels very like oh, like he's getting close
like
to
we're
like
different. Yeah,
yeah.
like we're two very, very different people, things, and beings, but like we are like seated, like we're like at the same wavelength right now. Like that's the
Yeah.
vibe of the scene.
Oh my god, he's literally a wavelength of celestial intent. A celestial wavelength of intent? Which one is it?
I think it's like a cosmic wavelength of celestial, and I don't know. Actually, I don't know.
Okay, that's really hot of
I've
him,
spent
but
the
yeah.
last year as a there. I think there's a word before wavelength, but I don't know.
I feel like there's not, but I don't know. But
We'll know in
anyway.
like a year or something.
Yeah, we'll know in like a year. But yeah, specifically the way that like he and Uriel had the same bench, but like they weren't sitting, like Cass was standing and Uriel was sitting, and now like he and Dean are both sitting, but they're on different benches. I love very on the nose symbolism. So, Cass appears on the bench next to Dean, and Dean goes like, "Let me guess, you're here to say I told you so." And Cass says no. And I don't know, Dean, blah blah blah, not interested. Cass says that he is not here to judge him and reveals that their true orders were to do whatever Dean told them to do.
I love the way they did this. Like, Cass, like, being like, our orders. And, like, Dean's like, yeah, I fucking know what your orders were about. And Cass just goes again, our orders were not to stop the summoning of some. And he's, like, so done with Dean, like, interrupting him all the time and having a quip-ass remark all the time.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, like, your analysis of Cass's speech in 402, right, was like, he just comes and he's like, there's a thing that I want to say, and I'm gonna say it regardless of what you do, and then maybe I'll answer your questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love him. So he says that this was specifically a test to see how Dean would perform under battlefield conditions, you might say. So yeah, I think it is about whether he'll say yes.
Dean says it was a witch, not the Tet offensive.
And I know that laugh, but unfortunately, it's about a Vietnam War reference.
I know that you were gonna bring that up because when you were navigating to the tab of the completely unpirated version of Supernatural that we watched from, I did see like that offensive Google search on the next tab over. So,
I mean, I knew what it was. I just wanted to check like if there were any like well-known war crimes associated with it as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dean says that, oh, I must have failed your test, but the truth is, if we go back in time, I would still fail it over again because I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but I know that families are real, people are real, and the swing, the trees, it's all here because of my brother and me. And Cass says, you misunderstand. I was praying that you would choose to save the town.
The idea that angels would pray is so... It's definitely something that I think about.
It sure is something. Cass says that everyone here is my father's creation, and he was hoping that Dean would save everyone, but the truth is the fucking seal was broken and it's bad. So, well, he says something that, you know, is very nice. He says, can I tell you something if you promise not to tell another soul?
And, okay, like, obviously, okay, not to interrupt a Cass moment, but it does make me really sad that if Dean, like, follows his promise, Sam is never gonna know that angels aren't dicks. Like, at least for a few more episodes.
Yeah. But, yeah, like, Dean is, like, very nice about this. I like that. Like, I mean, he could have, like, made, like, a face or whatever, but he just went, like, okay. And also, like, well, that's it. That's pretty much all I would say. And Cass says his iconic line, I'm not a hammer, as you say. I have questions. I have doubts. And he says that he doesn't know if they made the right choice here, if they passed, if they failed. But in the coming months, Dean specifically, and I don't know if he was talking about Dean specifically. Well, he is. He said, but he says that in the coming months, Dean specifically will have to make even more choices, and that's going to be difficult. He says, I don't envy the weight on your shoulders, Dean. I truly don't. And they look at each other, and then Cass goes, and the episode ends. And, well, I don't know. I like the idea that angels are not moral. Like, they're not like good and bad is so interwoven and also like not real that even like something that is supposed to be like a vessel of pure good is unsure about what is and isn't good. Like,
Yeah.
I like that concept, and I think it's actually pretty well executed this episode.
I also really like the use of the word anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what is right
Like,
or
there
wrong
was a time when he
anymore.
was sure.
Yeah.
There was a time when he was sure, but now he's doubting it. And that, like, exemplifies the feeling of the, like, doubt more than if he said, like, I don't know what's right or wrong. Because, like, that's just, like, him admitting that, like, oh, I never knew, or, like, it's not my choice to make. But, like, he's saying here that there was a time when he thought it was his choice to make. And now, like, he just doesn't know which it is. It's good. I like this conversation so much. And many people do. Many people love this conversation.
Many people do. It's not an unpopular opinion to like this conversation.
Yeah.
I also really like that, like, the, like, Cass's, like, protection of humans right now, like, comes from his faith in God. Like, he tells Uriel, like, it's blasphemy to say what you're saying about humans. And then here, like, he says that he wants to protect this town because everyone here is, like, his father's creations. And, like, I feel like eventually, like, his love of humanity
that changes.
Comes, from, like, meeting people and liking them.
Yeah. Like, something that used to be, like, holy, you know, like, because that's kind of, like, how he, like, with the reference to blasphemy, right? Like, right now, I think he thinks of people as, like, holy works of art. And then further into the show, they just become, like, beings that deserve respect whether they are holy or not, or, you know, like, and that's, like, I think, like, a meaningful change of perspective for Cass. I think it really is. Yeah. Like, it's separate now from his faith in God, and, like, the origins of it. What matters more is, like, the right now. And I like that. It's so cool. Cass is such a good character.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm actually looking forward to see what the reviews, like, especially the older reviews, say about this episode. Because I think a lot of my fondness for it comes from a sense of retrospect. Like, like, this is a rewatch this is a rewatch podcast for me. So, like, that is how I'm gonna look at everything. But I'm excited to see what it was like for, like, first timers back then to see Cass like this. And it's like, is this the moment that people were like, oh, I'm fond of this guy? Well, I mean, I've seen the, like, forum posts from when Cass showed up the first time, and, you know, people already loved him, but, like, when did he become, like, an indispensable character, you know? Okay, so, I mean, what's our general thoughts?
Cass is such a guy, but unfortunately the rest of the episode exists also.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it for me too. What's our best line, worst line? My worst line is jailbait. I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate
it's quite bad. I will go with the w-slur to cover all our bases.
Tracy, for Tracy. Yeah. It just happens once this episode, right?
Yeah. Just the killing her and then saying that, like, what was that about?
Yeah. Well, I would say my best line is, actually, when you pointed it out, that's when I was like, oh yeah, that's, like, the essence of the line or of the scene. Like, I don't know what is right or wrong anymore. I like that. You're right about it, and I appreciate it. It's good.
Thank you. God, there are a lot of good lines here. Like, obviously, like, the most iconic one is, I'm not a hammer, as you say.
As you say.
God, hello. But, like, I don't know, I think, okay, for diversity, let's go with Sam saying, like, this is what I've been praying to. 'Cause Jesus Christ.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. God. Okay, spread those sheets, baby.
Okay, we've got misogyny for shoresies. How many misogynies do we have? We gave Monster
I
Movie a
think
3. I think it's similar.
no, I don't think it's similar. Well, I think this one is like like a 2. At first I was gonna say it's a 1, but then I remember that like
Yeah.
Tracy is actually like a very significant.
Part of the
I think this
episode.
one is a 2.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll give it a 2.
Racism. 0.
Not that I can recall.
Yeah, and homophobia is a 0 too.
Not that I can recall.
We are clearing homophobia this season so far.
Well, that's just Cass's power.
Yeah.
It's been 0s across the board for homophobia every single week.
Okay, so IMDb, what's your guess?
Huh. Okay, let's see. What did we see last time? Okay, damn. Okay, so Yellow Fever was a fucking 9.1.
I know.
And Monster Movie was an 8.4. This tells me nothing. I have no clue what the people of the internet want. As I've said before, I keep guessing 8.7, and one day that'll have to be correct, so I'm gonna say that.
Yeah, 8.7. I would say this is a bit higher than that. This would be an 8.9.
Okay.
Or an 8... Okay, I already said it, so let's
I typed it already. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Oh! It's pretty low. It's an 8.4.
Huh. Okay. Okay, due to the case being terrible, I can understand that.
Probably.
Yeah, this person is upset at them calling it Sam Hain instead of Samhain.
Yeah.
Yeah, this person is talking about how this episode shows a new light on Castiel's character. The angel who appeared previously to be intimidating is now more compassionate, gentle, and a bit confused with human behavior. Oh, I want to fuck him so bad.
Well, I don't really see any comment that, like, matters to me. This one calls, like, the angel plot ad hoc. So, like, what they're saying is, like, there was no real plan. Well, I think that's it for this episode of Busty Asian Beauties. Next week, we will be discussing Season 4, Episode 8, Wishful Thinking. Leave us a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow us on social media. We are on Twitter at twitter.com/beautiespodcast and on Tumblr at bustyasianbeautiespod.tumblr.com. Our official tag is babpod, B-A-B-pod. Thanks to everyone who's donated to our Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/bustyasianbeautiespod. And check out our merch at babpod.redbubble.com.
You can email us any feedback, comments, or inquiries at bustyasianbeautiespod@gmail.com. See you guys next time. Bye!
Bye!
Yeah. In Filipino, cemetery is cementerio. So there's actually like, you know those like gag shows? And they had a song that was like super famous of like these two siblings fighting over what the English of cementerio is. If it's cemetery or cemetery. And I remember the song, every single word.
Okay.
So yeah.
And literally you're gonna perform it on the podcast right now.
No, there's a line there that was like, it's cemetery, not cemetery. Here's the spelling. Check it in the dictionary. Like, I just think it's such a fun song, and I miss that era of Filipino television.
Yeah. Well, you can bring it back. Have you considered not going to law school?
Would I become a writer in like the gag shows of the Philippines? I think that's a good idea. Yeah. Sam would have chosen that path. Except he's like so unfunny, it's unreal.
He's so unfunny. So he should write for SNL.
Wait, you have like one guy that you hate, right?
Do I? On
yeah,
SNL?
No. Like, I think you don't like Jimmy Kimmel or something. Or you do like him. Either one. Like, you either like him or you don't like him.
I think I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. Do I even know which... I don't have faces attached to all these late night men anymore.
There's one guy that you said, oh, he does like political stuff.
There's a lot of guys who do political stuff that I don't like.
You told me like he has like a show where he makes his writers, he reads jokes that his writers of color.
Oh, Seth Meyers.
Yeah, that one.
I don't.
Do you like him? You said you like him.
He's well, like I feel like I had like a late night TV clips on YouTube phase, which was mostly just a bunch of white men making like mid jokes about politics. And I think the second to I dropped them off one by one as I stopped liking them. Seth Meyers lasted until the second to last place, and then John Oliver held out the longest.
Do you like Conan?
Never really watched Conan.
I like him.
Does he... Who's the one who has that one Sherlock parody?
No idea. But
I think that's...
I know Conan for his Steven Yeun. Like he has a series where he goes to Korea with Steven Yeun. And I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Those are our late night opinions. Yes. I have... what's the worst thing you have done to a teacher? Like, what's the worst thing you've said or whatever?
I feel... Okay, I've generally been quite squeaky clean. I think in ninth grade I was, like, really...
I'm so
in ninth grade I was really annoying during sex ed. Like, I would, like, after each PowerPoint slide, I would raise my hand and go, like, God. Actually, gay people exist, and it's also fine to have multiple sexual partners. Yeah, that is what everyone in my class thought. Like, I think, like, we did peer grading of quizzes once, and someone wrote, "You're so annoying" on mine, and I never found out who.
They were right for that. They were completely correct to do that.
Yeah.
It was like, there was a school event once, and it was like a commingling situation. This was in high school. I was like in 9th grade or something. 10th grade maybe. And it was like, you know, like, it was just like a standing party, basically. So you just walk around and, like, talk to people. It was that kind of situation. And for some reason, I ended up talking to a teacher of mine. And this teacher is kind of like that kind of teacher where, like, he's close with students.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. And I told him straight up, I don't want to be your friend.
Yeah.
And... Yeah. Is that bad? I mean, I didn't want to be his friend. So
yeah, you literally didn't want to be his friend.
I didn't want to be his friend. I am very strict about the whole, like, your mentors should be mentor figures, not friend figures. So
yeah. I feel like I enjoy teachers who try to be your friend, but I agree that it
not
does
to this degree
get
though.
Weird sometimes.
Not to the degree that this Don guy is doing. Wait,
all he does is say that he has students call him by his first name. That's
I hate that.
Fine.
What? You say, sir. Okay, I've been told, I think it's you who told me, that in college, in your area,
Yeah.
you you go by first name with your
Yeah.
profs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredibly weird to me. Like I understand because I have one prof that I actually really like, and she's like, "Oh, just call me my first name. It's okay."
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason why is because she studied like abroad, so like
Yeah.
she got used to that. But
Teacher first names.
otherwise we call our teachers sir, ma'am, and prof.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I mean, starting in high school, I was first naming some teachers. So
Okay.
I feel like Dawn seems
But you've
less.
always been weird about your teachers.
We don't have to talk about that.
I would hate to be like in a room with you like in high school. And
Oh,
I
no,
just
absolutely. I'd be salivating over like half of the English teachers. It'd be unbearable.
I was not an English teacher pet. I was a physics teacher pet.
Oh, I
And
hated my physics
yeah.
teacher.
We're just gonna go into this tangent. But like
Yeah.
I think for me, like when I was in 7th grade, which in the Philippines, high school is 7 to 10, and then senior high school is 11 and 12. But when I was in 7th grade, I was like in a completely new city. I was living by myself, etc., etc. So like I didn't have adults in my life. So having like my last class was the physics class, and after class me and my friends would just stay in the classroom and just talk to our teacher
Yeah.
until like we are told that like, oh, you should go back to the dorm because the dorm is closing. So yeah, like I was very close to that teacher, and it was wonderful. So maybe you're right, maybe you should be friends with your teachers, who knows. I am,
Who
you know,
knows?
if I contradict myself, I contradict myself. I do contain multitudes.
That you do.
Yes.
Yeah. My
Okay.
physics teacher had a failed career as an attempted stand-up comedian before he became a physics teacher, and that was like really, really clear in everything that he did and everyone that he was. So that's
Yeah.
why I couldn't stand him.
Yeah. My physics teacher
Yeah.
taught me something that I really like. He
Mm.
said that you cannot fight every single battle in life. So,
Mm.
if for example, um, like you can't like advocate for everything and all that. So just if choose one thing that you're extremely passionate about and
Mm.
try to be an advocate for that thing
Mm-hmm.
specifically. And I like that is something that I value in terms of um like my own beliefs,
Yeah.
like you cannot, you know, like for example, like environment blah blah, like if you focus on every single aspect of like environmental damage of every single thing in
Mm-hmm.
the world, you're not gonna progress because you're gonna be stuck with anxiety, or at least I would be. But if you focus specifically on, for example, uh fashion, like, you know, like the fashion industry's impact on the environment, and try to do things with just that specific thing in mind, I think
Mm-hmm.
there could be a little bit more progress. Which, yeah, I think if you're a
Yeah.
science educator, that's an important thing to teach your
Mm-hmm.
students specifically, because like in science, like that's a very 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 relevant thing that you really need to go deep in one thing and not broad.
Yeah.
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 I don't want to talk about this episode anymore. No, we're
I
gonna
could
get
do
to
the
Cass. We're
next
gonna
scene.
get to Cass. We're gonna get to Cass.
We are. We
Uh,
are.
yeah. Interesting question. So your version of Sam Angst is makeup?
I mean, part of that. I feel like he would definitely like go for some emo looks, and a lot of like hiding things from his family. They wouldn't understand me, blah, 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 regarding his presentation.
I don't know, because I didn't have teenage angst.
Huh. Interesting.
What, I mean, we're gonna put all of this in the end. Who give a shit? But, like, what was your teenage angst?
Oh, like, incredibly boring, like, hashtag sad girl, like, gif of, like, tea cooling on a windowsill, like, sad music shit. Like, really nothing interesting at all. As we've established this episode.
Damn.
And, like,
Wait,
I don't know,
so you
clinical
weren't, like,
depression.
rebelling? You weren't, like, rebelling?
I've never snuck out of a window, which I do regret. I feel like someone should do that at some point. Like, I guess I wouldn't talk to my parents as much, and sometimes I get into arguments with them, but, like, it would be about hashtag social justice, so, like, really nothing interesting.
That's interesting. Well, I like I said, I didn't have teenage angst. I just had incredibly devastating depressive episodes starting age 17, which I don't count that as teenager. I mean, it is obviously a teenager, but, like, teenager to me is like 14, 15, 16, you know? Like,
yeah.
that's like the teenage angst era. I think I repressed it very much, and then it just busted open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your mom never deliver on any of the ultimatums?
No.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, like,
and,
one
like,
time,
now,
yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, like, she never says that to me, ever. Like, I think she realized at some point that, like, oh, if I say this, Gray would actually do it. So, now she doesn't say, like, anything like that. Oh, she doesn't talk to me. But, you know, it's
right.
fine. Yeah. Yeah, she doesn't, I think she has realized that I am more tenacious than her. So, am I using that word correctly? What does tenacious mean?
Probably. I think so. Let's
tenacious.
Check. Yeah.
Tending to keep a firm, yeah.
Yeah.
Relinquishing a position, principle, or course of action. Determined. And I am.
Yeah. Okay, well, my mom... Okay, yeah, no, I feel like I didn't let my mom finish the ultimatum. I feel like one time I was like, I hate practicing piano, and she was like, no one who hates practicing piano can stay in my house, and I said okay and left.
Did you do that?
Yeah. I left.
Oh my god.
I
What
mean,
if we are just like Sam for real?
What if we are just like Sam for real?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I did the, like, leaving the house / running away from home thing, like, thrice, but none of them, like, lasted more than 2 hours, so...
Yeah, I mean, I have done it, like, but not with my mother, because my mother knows not to do it. Like, with my sisters, like, they would say, if you,
Your
like...
fucking sisters had that power?
Yes, because my sisters are way older than me.
Seriously, though, that's still... Okay.
Like, I had my sister say, like, oh, this one is so stupid.
Mine was stupid too. It's cool.
She said, if you don't clean your room, don't ever come back to this house. And my parents had to fetch me at a public park. And my dad, like, sat down and talked to me for 2 hours trying to convince me to get up from the public park. Oh my god. Because I didn't want to clean my room. Love that. It was like dead of the night too. So
yeah. I think my running away plan was always that I was gonna sleep in the tube slide, at my local playground. I was like, that's protected from the elements. Let's go.
It's wild. Honestly,
Yeah.
being at the point in life where you're both like a person, like, you know, like you're aware of things and you can do things, but also you have to live at home or live reliantly to your family is such an odd feeling. And
Yeah.
like it's just it can be a lot, especially for people like us. like like queer people,
Like friends of Dorothy. Yeah.
Like people with limp wrists.
Yeah. Like Jimmy Novak.